Hello and welcome back to the Moneymatics Podcast. My name is Omobobola, and on today's episode, we're talking about a very hot topic that I've been seeing all over the financial and personal financial management space. Today, we're talking about renting versus buying. There are a lot of people out there saying you don't need to buy, you should rent, and some people saying you should definitely own your home, you don't need to rent. And today, in the spirit of the Moneymatics Podcast, where we like to weigh things side by side and see what is important for us, especially as personal finance is really personal. I'll be getting into this topic very soon in just a bit. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be looking at this topic, renting versus buying, from 5 or 6 different aspects, right? Let's dive right into it. Number 1, affordability and the upfront cost of whether you're buying or renting. So if you're renting, the upfront cost is very low, right? Most times you only need to pay 1 to 2 months deposit. Maybe if you're in countries where you pay agency fee, then a little bit of that. And then that's all you need to think about in the beginning. But if you want to buy, of course, you need to have the deposit, and that can be from 5 to 15% in some countries. I know that in Sweden, it's 15% deposit that you must have. That can be a significant amount of money. Just for context, for example, if you're buying something that is like 1 million Swedish crowns, which if you're living in Stockholm, forget about it. You're not going to find that apartment unless it's like a cubicle somewhere. For context, let's use that example. 1 million Swedish crowns, you want to use it to buy, you want to buy an apartment or a house worth that amount. 15% means you need to have 150,000 Swedish crowns in your pocket. And if that 1 million is 3 million, for example, you need to have 450,000 Swedish crowns in your pocket. That's a whole lot of money that most people do not have. And so sometimes people will probably consider renting, where you just need to think of 2 to 3 months deposit, and then you're good to go. You can rent a place. So definitely something to consider wherever you're living, especially if you live in Europe. Affordability. Do you have the money to put in as deposit or not? If you don't have the money to put in a deposit, then you should definitely rent. But if you do have the money, you should consider buying your own accommodation. The second thing I want us to look at is flexibility. This is the point a lot of people who are proponents of renting make. They're like, oh, if you're moving around, you should not buy a place, you should rent. And I would say this: flexibility. If you're still like in the space of your life where you know that you might be traveling, you might move, maybe you just got your first job, you're not sure if you're going to live in a town for long or in a city for a very long time, then of course renting is more adapted to your need because you don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, right? But if you have a family, you're already thinking of settling down, definitely you should consider buying or getting a mortgage that can buy your own property where you live and all of that. And so, yeah, flexibility. Renting gives you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to where you are in life. If you want to move, or if you want to be able to hop and just leave a place. But when you buy a place, when you buy a property, it means that you're ready to settle down. You're ready to be in that place for a long time. But now, this is a caveat. I've known many people, especially Africans in diaspora, who moved to a place, especially in Europe, and we're like, oh, I'm not going to be here for long. I'm only going to be in Sweden for 2 years. After my master's, I'm out of here. And then 10 years later, you're still here. And then you did not make that decision to buy a place early enough. So you really need to be asking yourself, am I really sure that I'm not here to stay? Because if you're in a place and you're going to stay for 5, 6 years, you should definitely consider buying your own space. But if you know you're going to be moving, renting will be good for you. So on to the third point that we want to look at today. Let's talk about cost. Let's talk about monthly cost and how that impacts stability. If you're renting, most times in Europe, in Sweden, in Germany, I know there are cost control measures put in by the government where your landlord can't just increase your rent anyhow. But still, there are times when the landlord may decide to increase the rent. They might decide to increase the price or add some other fees that you do not know about. So, of course, prices, your monthly cost can still increase. Mortgage, on the other hand, when there are low interest rates, take for example in Sweden for some 4 years ago, the interest rates were really low. We're talking 1 to 2%. Most times, the mortgage per month was really lower than the cost of renting. And another thing that you need to factor in is you're not building equity when you're renting. That money is practically going to a landlord and you don't have any hope of gaining back from it. On the other hand, if you have a mortgage and you're buying or you bought, then of course your deposit together with your monthly cost is also helping you to build equity. So you really need to think about this when you are deciding if you should rent or if you should buy. On the fourth point that I want to make, let's talk about the investment and equity aspect of buying or renting. When you are renting, you are not guaranteed. You don't even have a right to anything. Your landlord owns everything, right? So you don't build equity. You don't build your money that you're sinking into your accommodation is not appreciating in any way for you. Meanwhile, if you bought, maybe you took a mortgage and you bought your own property, you are taking part in equity appreciation. You can also definitely be taking part in equity depreciation, but most times over a longer period of time, your property will increase in value. And this brings me to something that you really need to know your location. You really need to know where you are. I've seen that a lot of the people that are in support of renting against buying are in countries where the value of properties are not increasing very much, right? The prices are very predictable. It's not increasing as much as maybe what you could make on the stock market or what you could make if you're investing your money in some kind of fund or some kind of financial market. But here's one thing that I say, and this is from a live example. 7-8 years ago in Sweden, you could buy a property today, and after 1 or 2 years, the value has increased by almost 50-30%. I mean, it was ridiculous. And at that point, it would be a very stupid advice to give someone to say, don't buy a property, because I mean, the value was increasing. There was really, you couldn't argue for renting in that kind of market. So I say to you, really, you need to really know your geographic location, the housing market in that location, how the prices are doing. Do prices go up, and at what rate per year do they do that? If I buy an apartment, does the price go up higher than if I buy a house? You really need to be considering those things when it comes to investments and equity appreciation. If you want your money to increase over time or your investment to increase over time, you should definitely see your housing as an investment opportunity. On the fifth point, I'm talking about maintenance and your responsibilities as a homeowner versus a tenant. So when you're renting, your landlord owns or has the responsibility to fix it. So let's say your fridge breaks down in a rented apartment, you call your landlord, they will come and fix it. Something gets spoiled, you call your landlord, they'll come and fix it. But if you're a homeowner, all that responsibility, my dear, is on you. So you really need to factor that into your monthly budgeting. You need to be thinking of expenses that you're not planning for. You need to think of maintenance. You may not need something now, but in 5 years, 6 years, the house really needs some kind of touch-up. You need to repaint a room. You need to do something. So you really need to be thinking about the cost of maintenance. And this is where renting for some people becomes something like, I don't know how to do. Especially, let me talk to you Africans in diaspora who don't know how to do it yourself. Europe is the land of doing it yourself. People become their own plumbers. They become their own carpenters. They become their own gardeners here. So if you're the kind of person that you are not a do-it-yourself person, maybe you're better off renting and then putting your money that you could be putting into your mortgage in something else that brings you money. But if you don't mind doing it yourselves, yeah, of course you should consider having your own place. And on the other side of that is the ability to be able to personalize your own accommodation. If you're in a rented space, there are things that you can't do. If you even put pictures on the wall and you put a hole in it, the day you're moving out of that place, you need to fix the hole. And some landlords will charge you. They will charge you for not fixing the hole right. I remember as a student, when I had a student apartment here and I was moving out, we had to wash the house. We had to clean it like we were professional cleaners, because if you didn't clean it properly, you would have to pay a fine for not cleaning when you move. So these are things that you need to think about. Am I okay paying maintenance costs myself, or would I like for that to be someone else's headache and problem while I just sit pretty and enjoy my accommodation? So that's something to really, really consider. And also consider, how personal do I want to have the right and the freedom to decorate my space the way I want? Of course, in Europe, people get rentals that they can be in for the next 20 years. And in that case, they don't mind doing whatever they want. But I just wanted to mention that is something to really think about. So the sixth thing that you can consider is the tax benefit that comes with mortgages. So if you are renting, you don't get any tax benefit for renting. It's a cost that you're accruing every month, and then that's it. That's basically it. But if you have your own property, you have some tax benefits that you may enjoy. So, for example, if you have a mortgage, 30% of the interest rate that you're paying every year is tax deductible, for example, which an advantage you do not get with a rental. So you may want to consider the tax benefits of having your own place that you call yours versus renting. On the flip side of this is the fact that even as a homeowner, especially if you own like a freestanding house here, you also have to pay property tax, which you do not have to pay if you're renting. So, I mean, you really need to weigh your own personal situation to see what really works for you, what you would like to consider when it comes to you making your own decision. Now, on to the last thing that I want to talk about. I mean, all this about renting or buying in any form, whether it's a property or if you're talking about, cars. I think I did an episode not long ago about leasing or buying. I think it's really about your own lifestyle choices. Do you prefer convenience against something that makes more sense mathematically? So you really need to be looking at that. What's your lifetime goal? What do you want to do in the next 5 years? Do you want a place for your children to grow up, a backyard for them to run around in? Then, of course, it's not only a mathematical decision. You're making a decision based on the fact that this is a need or this is also something that you prioritize. You really need to be looking at your own self and at your own family situation and saying, what do I really want? If I'm ready to settle, then let me buy a place here. If I'm not ready to settle, maybe I'm okay to rent, even if it doesn't make sense mathematically. So really, it's about that. So my final thoughts on this. When it comes to renting, the real advantage is just in the flexibility, the fact that you do not have to look for a big lump sum as an upfront cost in terms of deposit, and also just the freedom to be able to move and go if you need to, and also not having to think about maintenance and all of that. You're just, you're living in this place, and there is really not much thought that needs to go into your decision. While when you're buying or when you've bought, some of the advantages that you have is that you're building equity long term, and you are also, planting roots. You have more stability. Nobody can just wake up and say, come and leave this place. It's your own space. You can make it into what you want. So this is something to think about. But we've talked about the pros and cons. You must remember that there are costs that are attached to the responsibility of being a homeowner, really. And this is what I say to you. If you're in a place where you can't even buy a place, even if you wanted to, because you do not have the deposit and you don't see yourself having that deposit, this is what I say to you. Even if you're renting a place, take the money that you could be putting into your mortgage, put it together and buy something that you can rent out as a landlord. You don't have to live in the house. You can just buy something small, a one-room apartment, a two-room apartment, and then you are renting it out and making money back on it. So all hope is not lost. For the renter and for the buyer, there is hope for everybody, and there are advantages and disadvantages that you can consider. And until I come your way again, this is the Moneymatics Podcast.